Welcome everybody to the Ensuring Network Visibility and Security in an IoT World webinar. I'm your host, Nick Cavalancia. I'm with a company called Tech Evangelism. I'm a contributing editor today. And before we get started and actually meet our first speaker today, I want to just point out a couple of housekeeping notes for you. The first is to take a look at the widget bar that's part of the On24 platform. If you'll notice, there's a media player there. There is a Q&A box. We definitely want to encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, as well as any commentary that you might have on the topic. As my role in today's call is to make sure that I'm interacting with you, the audience members, and making sure that I bring that to fold here in the webinar to make sure that it's as interactive as possible. So please feel free to use that Q&A box and to interact with the webinar. Again, questions, you have comments, you have anecdote, whatever the case is, we'd love to hear it from you and make this as interactive as possible. You'll also note there's an opportunity there for you to interact with Twitter. If you're finding this engaging, get social and go ahead and post on Twitter anything you're finding about this webinar, so feel free to do that as well. And then the last thing is, for some of you, the screen might be a little too small, so you notice there's a slide area button. If you press that, you can actually move and resize the slides to make it more appropriate so you can actually see the presentation in an appropriate format and size. So let's talk today about our presenter today, Mike Reinhardt. Now, Mike is a director of product marketing at Accelops, and he brings over 30 years of IT experience in the global communications and cloud services infrastructure areas. He's worked for some of the largest organizations all the way down to very early stage startups. He's got a wide range of experience. His background includes strategic and leadership roles in a couple different areas: sales engineering, product management, and product marketing. In a number of industry-leading organizations, and he always puts a heavy focus on cloud communications, security and compliance, business analytics, and customer experience management. And Mike also holds a bachelor's degree bachelor's of science degree, there we go, in information systems management from the University of San Francisco. So welcome, Mike, to the call.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Welcome from California.
Yeah, thank you. So what we're going to cover today really quickly here, I just want to talk about that really before we get started with Mike. In a world today where you think about security as a critical concern in most organizations, the idea of allowing even, let's say, user-owned devices raises eyebrows. The security implications of devices that IT doesn't know about, doesn't control, all that elevates the risk of both internal and external threats significantly. So when you add into the conversation the Internet of Things, it should set off even more red flags if you think about it. You're now talking about a device that is far more in the, I'm doing air quotes here, the set it and forget it sort of category. You take, for example, let's say a Wi-Fi security camera that you're simply going to put in place and not worry about after that. And these devices have their own levels of security or maybe insecurity, as the case may be. So in today's webinar, Mike's going to cover why the Internet of Things should be a security concern, and then how it affects the threat landscape, and then ways to secure what is inevitably going to be a far more complex environment than without it. So, and with that, Mike, I'm going to hand the reins to you, so go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. If you're tied to the sales team, I know you're probably heads down trying to get your quarter and your month closed, so we do appreciate you taking the time. We think the subject is very important. We get a lot of questions around this, especially from the service provider community. It's probably our fastest growing area of the business. So again, as Nick said, please keep this conversational. Any questions, do shoot those out there. We want to make sure we try to get those addressed. The ones we can address, we'll get back to you guys after the conference with follow-up messaging. So I thought I'd start with just like a basic understanding of what does the Internet of Things mean. I think a number of folks have their perception of what that is. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's I don't know. And all of those are probably the right answer. But I thought I'd take a stab at using Wikipedia's example, which really says they're physical objects that are connected to a network, and then enables these objects then to collect and exchange data between themselves. It also allows the objects to be sensed and controlled remotely, so through an iPhone or some other device, and then results in improved efficiency, accuracy, economic benefits, better analytics, but it's meant to be business tools for businesses to do their functions better. Gartner takes a stab at it as well. They say it's a very immature domain where product and technology categories are still kind of in a state of flux. They really haven't been defined. Standards are still a bit loose. There's a lot of activity around consolidating some of the efforts around security and monitoring, but those still haven't gelled yet. But that being said, Internet of Things will really be a cornerstone for the digital business strategy, because these things do provide rich data sources that help in the big data analytics that many businesses are taking under their wing to get more information about customer service management, productivity, et cetera. But they're also saying that the Internet of Things will move towards a mainstream adoption in 2016 for many industries, and currently that's at about a 30% adoption rate, with the manufacturing space getting probably the most out of the capabilities that's in that stuff today. Andrew Rose from Wired.com did a really good article on the kind of the 3 stages of Internet of Things maturity. The first stage is really the object gets identified. It becomes interactive with other intelligent systems such as smartphones and web services, but it's just kind of a thing that's there. In the stage 2, the object is now able to sense its surroundings. So sensors, when you get into your house, it turns your heating and air conditioning on. When you leave your house, it automatically locks your doors. Those sorts of things where it's got some sort of awareness of its surroundings. And then the third stage is that it will be able to automatically interact with other things, so sensors and services, but it's almost got a mind of its own, has the ability to do things without being told, does have some sort of artificial intelligence built into that. One of the kind of scary things about the different stages is each of those are being deployed into the marketplace today. Each of those has their own areas of potential threats and vulnerability. The longer they're out there, the more opportunity hackers have to understand them and potentially leverage them. I just thought I'd throw out, this slide's probably a little bit hard to read, but these are kind of some recent examples of Internet of Things in the marketplace. So things like heating and air conditioning, you're probably familiar with. Smart cars, you've seen those. We have those in the Bay Area here quite a bit. Coffee pots, alarm clocks, a number of different devices that my wife loves to shop for Amazon on. And we'll pick a few of them just to kind of give some examples of how they're being used, but also some of the risks associated with that. So I'm going to talk about coffee pots, cars, and televisions. I just happened to have bought one last night, and it had a nice little revelation that I'm going to share with the group here that kind of surprised me, but after I did some reading, it's a pretty common thing that's going on in the industry.
Hey, Mike, I was on a call earlier today talking to a bunch of IT professionals. I'm thinking about how when you're showing coffee pots, people are going, oh, don't have to worry about a coffee pot. Come on, it's a coffee pot. But they actually found the IT was responsible for the washers and dryers in a particular organization. You know, it happened to be a healthcare organization, but they're smart washers and dryers, and they're responsible for them. So we're not too far out. It seems a little far-fetched sometimes when you talk about some of these devices, especially something like a washer and dryer, but we're getting to that point. So I just want to make sure that I emphasize, kind of reaffirm your notion that all these different types of devices that are out there, it's something that IT, if it's connected to the network, we're going to be responsible for it.
Yeah, and that's really some of the concerns that the IT professionals are having, because there are things that we do know that are coming, but there are also things that we don't know, and things that we don't know, which kind of adds even more complexity to it. But even the things that are out there today sometimes don't get the kind of scrutiny that they should when they get introduced to a network. Sometimes it's an afterthought, sometimes it's not even thought about at all, and it does pose some interesting problems for IT professionals today.
Agreed.
We'll start with just a quick story on a farmers insurance group that's currently using sensors on cars to detect if for example, a shopping cart has hit your car in a parking lot. You may be away from your vehicle. It's got the ability to send an alert and alarm to your phone. It also contacts an agent, puts the 3 of you together, the reporting company, the agent, yourself, to decide if there's a claim that needs to be filed. It has geocoded the location that you're at, so it knows when the actual bump occurred. It could be worse, it could be an actual accident, but down to even a shopping cart hitting the cars are using Internet of Things for better customer service and faster claims processing. One of my other favorites is the Internet of Cows, which I just found out about. And essentially it's kind of a really interesting things that farmers are doing with cows these days. They essentially have these Fitbit type of necklaces that they put on the cows that have antennas. It allows them to track where they are on the field. It also allows to say how many steps did they take, how much exercise are they getting. And then there's also deep science into when is this cow going to be in heat, and it's typically for like a 6 to 8 hour window, so they need to get that cow to the nearest bull as quick as possible, who'da thunk. But it's very key to their livelihood, getting new calves into the herd, and this gives them a way to use these devices that are on cows out in the field to better track that information. In the UK, there is a recycling firm that's currently using the Internet of Things for the bins that they use to carry their recycling material. So they know physically within the plant, where is that bin? Is it full? Is it empty? Is it replaceable? It also, they're using it on their scales to say, X number of cans are in this particular bin, we know because it's at this particular weight, therefore it needs to be dumped. So it's really adding streamlined functions and capabilities to the business that weren't there before, and really giving them a lot more intelligence and data to their day-to-day business. And then if I'm heading to, I was just talking to Nick about this, I'm heading to Orlando over the weekend. Have any of you been to the Walt Disney World? The first thing they give you when you check into the hotel is a Magic Band, which in essence is the way for you to pay for all of your services while you're there. It tracks your steps around the park, gives you entrance and access to certain things if you've paid for higher levels of access. But it really gives them, the park, good data on where are the crowds, where do I need to remediate those crowds, where do I need to open up roads and take down some cones. But it really gives a lot more data for them to provide a better experience to their guests while they're at the park. So that's kind of what it is, how it's currently being used, and we'll kind of step into some of the phases as to why are people concerned about that. And the number that keeps getting bantied about the most is that by 2020, it's expected that the Internet of Things will consist of about 50 billion objects. So that's 4 years away, and it's double the connected devices that we currently have out in the population today. It's in essence about 6 devices per human being on the planet. So you can imagine all of those are looking for a network to connect to. All of those are looking for resources to pull down from the network, all taxing the network, but also potential threats and areas where bad actors can get into a business through a simple device. So kind of continuing on with that same theme, HP did a report a couple years ago that said 70% of the most commonly used Internet of Things devices already contain vulnerabilities. The focus on those devices was, I want to build this cool thing that does this really good stuff to help with analytics and helps provide the data my end users are going to need, but not a lot of thought went into, well, how do I encrypt this in case somebody's trying to hack it? Or how do I keep this back door closed and prevent people trying to hack it? And it's partly driven because there's really a lack of common standards, as we mentioned before. And then you've also got issues that people are concerned about privacy with things like the smart door locks. It can also monitor people's entry and exit to a business. So again, if I'm a bad actor, I've got a laptop in the parking lot, I'm waiting for the security guard to leave for the night, I can hack into those door alarms and door locks and be able to determine when that person has left, and it gives me access to the building as well as other bad things I could be doing in there. It provides a high potential for IT blind spots. So before, it was, I can remember back in the day when I got my first Wi-Fi router at the office at home. I worked for AT&T at the time, and we were forbidden to bring those into the office, but they were such a great tool when you had a wireless laptop. But the IT team was very concerned about it. They were not able to figure out how to block access to it from outside. So that took a long time to get business adoption. And then recently it's been the mobile devices and the millennials who don't use phones, desk phones, and their computer is their phone in essence. So these mobile devices are starting to hit IT networks where they may or may not have been on the IT plan. The BYOD plan may not have been in place, but that's starting to become more mainstream. But now you've got the other issue of these things called bring your own wearables, so things like Fitbits and other devices that people will have attached to their bodies that, again, are going to start driving access to the network, starting to ping Wi-Fi resources as they come into a building, sucking down bandwidth, potential vulnerabilities again into the network. And again, some of these devices, as they're being deployed today, may not have been hacked since deployment, but the longer they're out there, the more time people are going to have to try to uncover what's really the easiest way to get through to those devices. And those vulnerabilities will definitely be uncovered in the near term.
Mike, can I put in and interject two quick stats
Yeah.
that I remember as I'm reading these? On the last two bullets you talk about, the fact that it's going to basically raise some issues around users bringing their own devices in and that sort of thing. There was a study done last year by the Cloud Security Alliance, and when it comes to shadow IT, which of course normally has to do with users going and finding their own services, like I need my own file sharing services on the web, or find a SaaS app or something like that. The interesting stat was that only 8% of organizations can actually track the use of quote-unquote shadow IT and what people are doing in the organization. And I think what's interesting is the fact that you're talking about like Fitbits and things like that, bringing all these other devices that no one's even aware of. I love the Donald Rumsfeld sort of quasi reference you gave earlier of the sort of the unknown unknowns, so to speak, if anybody goes that far back. And that 8% is going to go even lower, where you as an organization, you guys in the audience, you're going to know less of what's actually happening in your organization because these devices are coming in. And the other thing that came to mind when you're talking about the vulnerabilities and these devices being long-lived, in the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, I want to say it was the 2015, it might have been the 2014 report. If you're not reading that, by the way, read it. Great report every year. Yeah, one of the things stats I had in there was of the attacks that leveraged a vulnerability, that 99% of them were vulnerabilities that had a known patch for well over a year. So apply that to the stuff that Mike just talked about, where they're saying it's going to be a long-lived device, like a security camera or something's going to be there for years, but there's going to be a vulnerability that no one's going to patch probably because they're not even thinking about functionality, not necessarily security. So I just thought I'd color the conversation a little bit. Didn't mean to take over anything, but I just want to make sure that that's what people's minds.
Yeah, those are great data points. We were talking about before how I'm a small marketing team, and our web platform is built on WordPress, but it's an older version of WordPress. We had a customer tell us that they couldn't get to our site because it had been blocked through their security software because that particular WordPress version had known security flaws but had not been upgraded. Shame on our SEO team, but it's little things that, like you say, that kind of just get off the radar. They don't seem really important until it's causing problems. Yep, exactly. So we'll talk about some of the recent Internet of Things security flaws that have been exposed. These were the devices that are out there. Again, this is focusing on today's world because tomorrow's world is somewhat unpredictable, but there are some things that are going to be parallel. So we talked about the coffee pot. So this is the infamous coffee pot. It's made by Smarter. It's called an iKettle. We all need one of these. It gives you the ability to turn your kettle on or off through your iPhone. You can also set the number of cups that you want, how hot you want it, how strong you want it. A great little device, with the exception of the fact that it's really easy to knock it off the Wi-Fi network and insert your probe into that. And with two simple commands on your computer, you can get the unencrypted wireless key and then now have full access to that Wi-Fi router on site at that business, and all those things that, bad things that could be done with that type of scenario. So again, something as benign as a coffee pot could be an IT nightmare and a big source for things that you need to be paying attention to, especially if you're worried about compliance or just even security breaches and protecting your business's reputation. This one was pretty widely publicized, the Jeep that was able to get hacked into remotely through the Uconnect entertainment system that's on board in the car. They were able to control the environmentals. They could turn the air conditioning on and off remotely. I think they were 10 miles away in this case. They could change the radio station, the volume, turn the windshield wipers on and off. Those are kind of prank things, but the really scary thing is that they were also able to disable the brakes on the car and kill the engine. So obviously, huge potential for super high risk in that environment. So I mean, if you're a delivery company, yeah, your truck's out of commission, the driver's safety, the public safety, but the other scary thing is that there are concerns that these new capabilities to take over cars could also, in turn, and this kind of plays into the terrorist issues we're hearing about today, but the suicide bombers now may be using cars as their vehicle, no pun intended, to kind of do their harm. So a very, very scary capability that was overlooked in the design of these cars. Tesla's done a really good job, but even they have had some issues with that. One additional one, I got a brand new smart TV last night from Samsung. Nothing against Samsung, they're not the only ones. And it's really cool. I can talk to it. I can tell it to turn on, turn off. I've also got an Alexa at home, which is the Amazon version of kind of their Simon. But as I was reading the manual, I'm looking through the voice commands, trying to tune it. There's a little caveat in there that says, to provide you with the voice recognition feature that you want, the voice commands might be transmitted along with information about your device, including the device identifiers, to a third-party service provider, so nuance. So in the security world, you really have to have tight controls over your own shop first, but then if you're using any kind of third party in anything that you manufacture or develop or produce, those entities become a large liability, for your business. So, for example, the famous Staples breach was caused by a heating and air conditioning employee opening a phishing email. He happened to have access to the target network. They got into the heating and air conditioning files, but they were able to go from there into the PCI readers where the credit card data was being swiped. So this third party wasn't vetted correctly. They weren't trained correctly. So I don't know if Samsung's had deep conversations with Nuance on protecting my information that's going across the internet to their location, or if they're storing it securely on their site. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to just kind of randomly threw that in the document without really providing any kind of additional safeguard data about what's happening with that data. Or if I had concerns, what do I do about that? And that would really make people mad. That's what it did with me, actually. The other thing is the Fitbit. Also got a lot of play in recent reports, although it's somewhat been debunked. I don't know if there's a little bit of marketing gamesmanship going on between the two companies, but the article stated that they were able to get from a Fitbit device into an iPhone because of the inability to lock down the Bluetooth connection on the Fitbit itself. But it gives access into an iPhone, and if that iPhone is in turn being used for business purposes, potentially they could leapfrog from that into the corporate environment and get access to resources, critical data, or pollute some of that critical data. But again, this is moving from the BYOD, your bring your own device world, to the bring your own wearable world. There's really not a lot of businesses today that have policies around that, but it is a good area to start thinking about what IoT devices might be coming into your particular business or the clients that you're working with, and helping them have a good strategy around cataloging them. What are the potential weak spots in them? And another recommendation by Gartner is to put the IoT devices into their own reporting domain, their own network, so you can lock them down should anything kind of get out of control. The other thing is targeted ads based on the ability to hit your Bluetooth. So, for example, you're a really good user of the Fitbit. You've done all your routine for the day, and there's the potential now for spam to hit your device with, hey, great, you finished your workout. Here's a note to show you that you're actually getting really close to this hamburger joint. And, oh, by the way, here's a free hamburger coupon. So knowing that this person may be in a little weak, part of their day and trying to do good, but that might tempt them to go do something they wouldn't normally do. But again, in the risk assessment that's been done recently, there's been a lot of studies about other devices besides, I don't want to just pick on Fitbit, but all of the devices have the problem with the inability to turn off the Bluetooth capabilities. But there's a number of holes in all of these that are currently being addressed. These were identified back in June. They're all scrambling to try to fix those holes. But again, until that's done, they still remain as a vulnerable entry point into a business. And I think this is probably the more scary one. This is one where I'm working with a few MSP partners. There's regulations if you're in the compliance business, NERC, SIP, SCADA, those are acronyms you're going to probably hear, but it's really protecting our infrastructure, the power infrastructure, and there's a lot of vulnerabilities around that today. Back as far as, I think it was 2007, there was a U.S. Department of Homeland Security were involved in a remote access trial or test to see if it could be done into a power facility. They were able to hack into a generator and turn off its cooling system to the point where it smoked and fell to its knees, which then stopped generating power. So something as simple and kind of a dumb device as the generator was able to be hacked and took out a power plant. But this, just in the past year, the Ukraine area had a similar thing where 3 regional electrical power companies were hit. It impacted over 250,000 of their customers. It enabled them to take down the grid. They were able to get in through malware that erased some critical data from the hard drives and then corrupted some of the boot records on those drives. But the other thing was that they were able to get into some serial to Ethernet devices and really attack the firmware. So things you wouldn't think about as a smart device are vulnerabilities within an organization need to be considered. And then they also targeted the UPSs that as they were trying to bring those devices back up, the UPSs were failing and causing additional alarms and additional length of time on the power outage. So there are MSPs, managed service providers, that are focused on that specific industry, trying to help them through some of those keys. But you can see this recent chart for 2015. I take that back, that's 2014. But energy and critical manufacturing were the 2 industries that were targeted the most for hacking, and energy especially being obviously a key component of our society, and that being up and running and available is key to keeping our world safe. So some of the IT network challenges, I'm probably preaching to the choir with the people that are assembled here, but physical infrastructures are changing, the virtual infrastructures are changing, different clouds or environments are coming in. Then on top of that, you've got the Internet of Things. So your world was already kind of creatively challenging, and now it's even more so. And things, again, that we don't know are going to be coming into your environment. You're going to need to have ways to address them quickly, get on threats, remediate those threats, block threats in the future with tools that can help you quickly identify that. This is a recent survey that Black Hat did. Black Hat's typically the smartest of the security bunch. This was a survey that was done late last year. They asked the group that was assembled, what do you think is the greatest concern 2 years from now? And the number one thing on their list was digital attacks from the Internet of Things. And partly, again, it's partly driven because we just don't know. There's things we know that are out there. We know those are bad, but there's things that we don't know, and those are posing some really challenging environments for these people. The follow-up question to that first question was, does your organization have enough security staff to defend itself against these current threats? So 73% said we're completely underwater, we could use some help, or what staff. Only 27% felt that they had enough staff to defend itself against these current threats in the environment. And this is only going to increase. I mean, again, as the number of devices, as the impacts on networks are seen, this problem is only going to grow. But again, it's a good opportunity for you folks in the MSP world. This is a recent report that Cisco did that was just published, that the worldwide shortage of information security professionals right now is at 1 million unfulfilled openings. These are cybersecurity jobs not security guards, but people that are in the trenches trying to fight against threats to the network, data breaches, compliance management. There's just not enough personnel out there. And then Symantec, it's kind of a competitor of ours, but they also agree that the demand for that workforce is going to continue to grow and be 6 million lacking globally, with a 1.5 million shortfall just in the U.S. alone. So a very big problem to solve, very little resources. So the tools that need to help these teams need to start growing and getting better to make these jobs easier to manage. So this is, again, probably no surprise to any of you. There's a rapidly evolving threat landscape. It's challenging now. It's only getting more challenging. Compliance standards management is hard enough now, and again, with Internet of Things coming into the fray, that's only going to add more complexity, more reporting data you're going to have to collect, more audit trails you're going to have to provide, making that very tough. And then you've got either lack of personnel or lack of skilled personnel, plus the tools that can help you with fighting these battles. I think the last statistic I heard on security tools is most organizations have on average like 53 different tools that they use for things from malware, antivirus, cybersecurity, network operations, CMDB management. All these things have different manufacturers in many cases, different people running them. The ability to correlate all that data quickly to find a problem is just not there. And then, sadly, these are the current stats from recent studies of enterprise businesses. 47% said they had either a material breach to their network or their systems over the past year. And the average days to detect an attack is at 256. And while that sounds like a lot, and it is, it's actually less than last year. That's the good news. But the downside of that is that 81% of those breaches were discovered by a third party, meaning somebody outside of the organization. So in the case of a healthcare breach, the patient found out that their data had been hacked. They went back to the doctor. That's how they found out. Credit card got hacked. Credit card issuer is the one coming back to the company saying, "Hey, looks like you've been compromised. You need to deal with that." So it's again, a really challenging market as an IT professional. And as I mentioned, most organizations have multiple departments involved in trying to keep ahead of the threats that are impacting their business, because it impacts things like customer service, employee productivity. But currently, most threat problems are happening in the rearview mirrors. It's something happened. Now I'm going to go try to figure out what happened, as opposed to me identifying it up front and squashing it before it got too big. So very reactive, post-issue forensics, requires multiple people out of their normal day-to-day loads. They're in a conference room with a pile of paper and pamphlets and reports that they've pulled together. They've got to try to manually cross-correlate that data to say, okay, here's where this thing happened and that touched this box, and here's this software rev that was on here, and here's who changed that software thing. So it's a very manual, prone to human error type of a process, and not very efficient, obviously, and impacts service level agreements that you have with your customers as well as with your internal staff. Mean time to repair or restore is slow. Unhappy customers, unhappy and unproductive workers really adds to the whole mix. Not to mention the impacts on the corporate brand. If you've had your data breached, it really puts a bad taste in customers' mouths or even potential customers' mouths.
Mike, there's an interesting kind of correlation between these two. You look at the amount of time it takes for data breaches to be discovered, and those numbers don't surprise me at all. I remember looking at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and the average was like 9 months or something to detect fraud. And it was the same thing, external sources like the police coming or something like that saying we found this information, and I've got stories upon stories that kind of align with this too. But the fact that you don't know that the data breaches happen, and the fact that we add in the Internet of Things, you're talking about the fact that you don't even know that the device exists. And right. That's what makes it doubly scary, the fact that you don't know the entry point is even on your network, giving someone entry, And then on top of that, so pinpointing where this came from is difficult if you're not paying attention. So I love the fact that you're just kind of correlating all this together and presenting it. It makes really good sense.
Yep. And it's really part of the story that we bring to the market, and we'll talk about it at the end. But it's a common problem that everybody is trying to face today. How do I detect problems faster? How do I get data from all of my teams compiled together faster? How do we fix things before they become long and drawn out? So it's huge. It's becoming, I don't have slides on this, but in other presentations I do, it's gotten up to the board level now, where the board of organizations are getting involved in the security decisions, because it has such a huge impact on corporate revenues. As I mentioned, the corporate reputations with the public and community, third parties that they do business with. It's just a huge problem that's it's been difficult to deal with. Gartner's kind of thrown their hands up in the last report I read. They said breaches and attacks are inevitable, so it's really finding them fast and getting them remediated quickly. ESG is a local laboratory that did a report on Accelops that we can send you guys a copy of. It's a really good detailed report, but they also did a recent survey this year with IT professionals. They asked them, what is the most important thing for incident response excellence? What is it you as an IT professional need to have to make that job easier or better than what you're doing today? The first answer was that security and IT tools need to be integrated. And then they also need to understand whether a security incident impacts one of their assets in the organization, and which asset is that. So if I have to pull that asset out of the network, which departments are going to be impacted, which processes are going to be impacted, which employees are going to be impacted, which customers are going to be impacted, so I can have a very thought-through process of removing that out of my network, remediating the threat, but also understanding the implications in it. And then security tool integration, as I mentioned before, so many organizations, either by plan and design or through acquisition, mergers, different tools come to into the environment. People are trained on it, so they're used to using that. That's the ones they're comfortable with, but it may not be the best solution for an overall management plan. So this is partly based on interviews that we've done with our own MSP partners, managed service provider partners, as well as reflecting kind of some of the data we've seen in some of the reports that and surveys that we've gone through. So as an MSP, to be a trusted advisor in this really scary world with threats and breaches happening every single day, and these are the ones that are being reported, not the ones that you don't hear about. You really need to be able to support all infrastructure types, because there's just such a hodgepodge now of legacy broadband networks, cloud networks, public, private, hybrid networks, hypervisor types that are coming out there. You just need to be able to incorporate all of that into your world when you're doing a good job in managing a company's environment. Obviously, you need to identify, fix, and prevent more quickly and easily than is currently in place today. But then you also need integrated tools that help you monitor and correlate the analytics that you're drawing into your environment for faster remediation. So again, if you have a holistic tool or capability, you need something that's going to be comprehensive, providing real-time analytics in the ability to discover things quickly, monitor multiple different instances, the Internet of Things playing into that even more so now, being able to establish baselines and understanding what's normal versus what is a potential trigger for an event starting to occur, managing SLAs, metrics associated with your applications running the network. So there's a bunch of stuff there, but all those need to be kind of holistic in your world in monitoring a comprehensive environment for threat detection. And it really starts with really knowing what's out there. So it's what does your centralized management database look like? What are the switches? What are the routers? What are the servers? The Wi-Fi devices? What are the applications? Who are the users connected to the devices? What are their IP addresses? Where are they physically located? How are they interconnected with each other? If one of those elements falls off the CMDB, what's impacted, who's impacted, how can I route around that? All those questions have to be answered through a CMDB and network topology that's current, up-to-date, real-time, because if you're doing it manually, which many organizations do, as soon as you hit the last key on your keyboard, you're potentially out of date. You don't know what's coming into the network, so the Internet of Things again, if something pops onto your network, you didn't have it on your list, you're not going to see that device on your topology map. You're not going to know that it's a potential threat until potentially it's too late.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you a question that I think is on probably some of the audience's mind. When we talk about knowing what devices are there, how are, and I'm not talking about a product aspect of this, because I know you're going to talk about what Accelops has to offer, but just from the standpoint of how is someone supposed to know that IP address is a coffee machine? There's a question I'm going to ask you later on if it's about your product, but one of the audience members is asking about what kind of interface is necessary. Is this an issue for them? They're probably got to be wondering something around, how are you going to know that it's a dishwasher? How are you going to know it's a smart TV? Is there a database somewhere? I'm thinking about more from educating the audience standpoint. How is anything ever, any product, any solution, even themselves ever going to know what that thing is that's on their network?
Yeah, so the way we discover it is really putting in the range of IP addresses that are associated with your network. So these are known ranges of IPs. We'll go out and ping, collect data about the individual devices. They'll come back and tell us information if we've got administrative privileges for those devices. Because as part of the discovery, we're also looking at, admin level details, so we can see what's the IP of the device, where is it physically located, what is the device, and I'm sure we're going to be building additional icons to have to deal with the Internet of Things. But what is the device? What is the current version of software that's running on it? When was the last change to it? A lot of rich data that we collect as part of the discovery process in setting up the baseline on day one. So this is why this is really the most important step, is really I need to know what my world looks like today, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. I just need to know what's physically connected to everything that's on my network. That then allows me to establish a baseline. Then I can set triggers and alarms and alerts for any changes to those states that I think might be an indicator of something bad. And then I'll continue to tweak and tune that as I get more experience with my network and how it operates. But to your point, as anything new comes onto the network, I'm also going to get an alert and an alarm that says, hey, I see a device connecting to a Wi-Fi out in the lobby. This is not a trusted device. This could be potentially a threat. You have the ability then to shut that Wi-Fi device off or continue to remediate it to figure out what's going on, if that's a real person or just a rogue device trying to do something bad. But any changes to that network are tracked in real time and reported on in real time against the baseline with all that rich level of detail. I'm not doing a demo as part of this show today, but at the end I'll send you, or I'll show you a link that you can use to go visit one of our demos where you can get the deeper dive on it. But we collected a lot of rich detail and data on it. For example, if a firewall gets entered, I can see, was that the right credentials that were added? And if it was, great. Is it the right IP address that was added? Is that one of the ones that's in my trusted database? Is that Mary's, either her cable modem at home or her desk at the office or some other location in the office? Or, excuse me, is that a Ukrainian IP address that is going to probably cause me some concern? And knowing that's probably not going to be Mary, but I can also say, what was the configuration of that firewall before it was entered by this individual? What changes were made? And then I had the ability to revert back to the original state that it was in prior to that person entering that box. But it gives me all the version control data, making sure that I've got all the right versions on the network. So it's a really rich source of everything that's attached to the network and its current state on day one. But then as it continues to self-learn over time and continues the topology mapping over time to help IT professionals understand, again, which applications are affected, which departments are affected. And if you've got a large organization, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but and in compliance environments, you may not want to look at the overall infrastructure. You might want to just pull out the elements that are associated with a particular compliance environment. So just PCI, for example. So there may be like 10 devices, for example, that are just in the whole chain of PCI card processing that you want to have specific reports on, specific dashboards on, specific emails to specific individuals. All that is customizable through this CMDB capability. And the next, we talked about this already, but really supporting all the infrastructure types, the ones that are there today, plus the ones that are continuing to grow into the market. Hypervisors becoming more and more prevalent in networks. The ability to support all of these and any new ones that be coming on the market. And then also having the right reports. Some of the problems that IT staffs have are having to build reports from scratch, or having professional services teams come in with expensive hourly rates to build reports for the environment that they're in. So if compliance is a concern, so PCI or SOX or HIPAA, or even the SANS critical control capabilities are something you want to focus on, we've got a number of reports built in. Some of our competitors do as well, but it's just really look for things that have already taken the steps to make your transition easy to a tool like this, but also has customizable fields that you can use to tweak it to any particular elements that are important to your particular environment, so that it's resilient and has the ability to change and morph as your needs change. And again, this is a little more germane to Accelops. This is kind of one of our key differentiators is we're taking, back to the CMDB, we're tracking CPU utilization, memory utilization, so traditional NOC up-down type statistics. But then we're cross-correlating that with the network operations center side of things, the log data from firewalls, routers, switches, and the applications that are running on the network. So because a small thing like a phishing attack might look like a little blip on a radar on a NOC world, but could be the early stages of something developing in your network that could be much huger going forward. So this ability to cross-correlate that data helps you to more rapidly identify things that might be impacting your network and help you to remediate them before they do become a problem. Multi-tenant architecture is another capability that's needed especially for the managed service provider world, but it's also important in large enterprises or higher education. Essentially, the ability to carve out both physical and virtual reporting domains. So we've got a number of colleges on our network, UC Santa Cruz, CSU Monterey Bay, where they've got like a student store where they're doing PCI type applications. That's something they want to look at separate from the student union, separate from the professor's hall and the laboratory space. So they've got a overall view of the campus, but then they've also got individual reporting domains that have different stakeholders and co-owners and reporting alarm alert status reports that are being sent out either through email or pages or SSL messages. But if you're a managed service provider, obviously then it gives you the ability to carve individual customers into reporting domains and even drill down further than that. But as an MSP, have an overall view of your entire network as well. So this is the last two slides where it's a little bit more of a commercial, but trying to help you understand some of the value proposition that we've brought to the market, where we're seeing traction. As we talked about kind of going through this whole deck up to this point, most organizations have multiple silos of data collection, retention, that may or may not talk to each other, that may or may not have the ability to cross-correlate easily. The Accelops tool was built from scratch to do that. We essentially pull all those different reporting domains under a single tool through a single pane of glass view to be able to see what's going on in your organization, with slideshow views of reports if you have a big screen that you want to watch specific aspects of the organization, or down to the mobile device. And then this is kind of our key differentiators. These are really the things that set us apart from the rest. So we get categorized in a SIM category with Gartner, which is a very big part of what we do, but we do SIM plus so much more. And this is what we talked about at RSA. There's so many things that we do that other SIM partners don't have the ability to today. So again, we're the only one that provides knock and sock solution in a single pane of glass view, whereas many of our competitors require separate servers, separate reporting domains, either manual or very kludgy, non-scalable ways of going beyond a certain number of devices. This capability is also patented through our founder. As I mentioned before, the real-time correlation of security and network threats is happening through the CMDB. We're seeing information about, like I said, the CPU utilization, memory utilization, brute force attacks, a number of different reporting capabilities built into the service. The CMDB engine itself we have people just using our tool just for that capability alone because and we've actually had customers where, I won't name the company, but a good friend of mine's an IT professional, a CIO at a Silicon Valley organization. They had gone through a number of merger and acquisitions. We plugged our tool into the network and discovered a number of devices that were attached that they weren't aware of, as well as a full group of people in Australia that were happily using their internet service that was tied to them from a long, long time ago relationship. But that CMDB tool alone is really good in keeping customers current because, again, it'll go out and discover the network today, but also continues to monitor in real time and update in real time any changes to that network. We also have a threat intelligence center. Many competitors do. Many of our partners in the firewall space do as well. But essentially, we're collecting anonymized data from the devices that are attached to our network. Where we see trends, bad actors coming onto the network, we're finding those quickly, remediating those quickly, giving people information about these IPs are bad, please take them off your list. The multi-tenant architecture, again, key to managed service providers. We make that really, really easy to make this a business out of the box quickly. I'll just close on a couple slides. It's good news if you are an MSP. We are seeing a lot of folks moving from a broadband-focused, network up-down time-focused environment to adding security to their portfolio, primarily because of the demand that we just saw in the earlier slides. There's just not enough people out there. Many times these MSPs have relationships with these customers. This gives them the ability to go deeper and more horizontal within the organization. So yes, the CISO might be still buying the security software, but you can go talk to the sales manager about how important is Salesforce.com to him or her in their day-to-day business. How important is the web to the person who's got e-commerce under their belt? But getting additional resources on your side when you go talk to that CISO about how the capabilities this tool can bring will help them in their businesses. So again, by 2020, 40% of all security technology acquisitions will be directly influenced by a managed security service provider, MSSP. So it's a tremendously fast-growing area. And then one last Gartner slide. This is just a slide that they closed on last year. The information security market will grow 13.8%, but the IT outsourcing segment is growing the fastest at nearly 25% CAGR. So huge opportunity for you folks that are MSPs today or are looking to work with them. There's also opportunities in that area. So that is the run-through of the slides. We've got about 4 minutes for questions. I do have information on there if you do want to get a demo after this call at any time. We are happy to do that, to do a deeper dive in some of the things I covered at a really high level today, but encourage you to do that.
Cool. We'll leave that slide up while we're doing a couple questions, and there are a couple that are here. So let's take those real quick, and then we'll tie this up. Make sure you guys get out of here at the top of the hour. So one of the questions that came in is, how is Accelops installed? Is it agents or is it an appliance?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that we get quite often. It is an agentless. We will put collectors out in an organization that kind of helps parse out the noise and sends the good data back to the workers, which in turn go back to a supervisor. But it's an agentless platform with the exception of Windows. Windows is very chatty and does pump out a lot of data. So we will put agents on premise to kind of tone down the noise before it gets back to the people that are doing the devices that are doing the analytics on the service. But So some of our top competitors are appliance-based. We've won a lot of deals because of the fact that we're not hardware intensive. So the downside to the agent, besides the expense, is the need to buy servers, and those servers typically have a lifespan of about 3 years, where the software gets upgraded, but the CPU still has the same limitations it did when it was installed day one. So you either have to purchase additional hardware, which if you're selling hardware is a good thing, but it's a tough problem when you're trying to scale an organization and making it more complex to manage when you have multiple pieces of hardware to manage as well.
All right, so we got a couple more. Michelle's asking what's the link to the demo site. You had mentioned you were going to put that up. Is that on the current slide or not?
Yeah, it should be on the slide. Yeah, where it says request a demo, just go to the info@accelops.com. Or my email address is up there as well, mike.reinhardt@accelops.com. Happy to take questions directly as well.
Okay, so there's that. Alex, you mentioned there's a slideshow available for download. If it is, there's a media player link at the bottom. Click on that and see if it's there. I'm not sure. Jake, are you still on the call? Do you know if the slideshow is available right now or they get it afterwards?
Yeah, I believe those are available in the green widget on the screen.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks. Mike, Kevin asks, what's the average size of a client that Accelops can be used for? He means the size of an organization. He's actually giving a little bit of color by saying, is it as a 2-user office? Is that too small?
Well, I'll tell you, we price the service on a per device, per EPS, events per second, platform. I'm trying to think if we have any 2-device companies out there. I guess I'll throw out a commercial for something that we launched just ahead of RSA. We do so, back it up a little bit. Our sweet spot has been kind of mid to high-level, high-size enterprises, but we have been getting pinged by SMBs, for example, that have multiple retail outlets. They may have 5 stores with PCI compliance needs. They're looking for a lower-end solution or a lower device solution. Before, because it was a premises-based solution, that was their only option. They had to have an IT person managing it. We launched a cloud service ahead of RSA, so that makes it easier for us to deploy to the smaller consumers of that product. But yeah, I would say that there's really no low or high end. We've got a pretty good span of customers worldwide. With Staples is probably our biggest currently, with all their retail outlets in both the U.S. as well as abroad, managing their entire PCI environment, down to a few insurance companies that I can't remember how many devices they have, but 2 might be a little low, but that's something we can easily do through the cloud. I guess the short answer.
Sounds like it's more of a, is it cost effective more than is it functional? So that's good
Yeah.
there. So it looks like we're at the top of the hour. So if we didn't get to your question, someone from Accelops will get back to you, make sure they do answer the question. I think we got to all of them. There might have been 1 or 2 maybe I missed that were in there. Our next webcast is coming up actually tomorrow on Beyond Disaster Recovery, so you can see the URL that's there as well. And with that, Mike, I want to thank you for your presentation today. So thank you for providing us with a great set of information.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thanks to everybody who was able to make it today.
Yep, and thank you all for attending today, and we will catch you on the next webcast. And this concludes our webcast today. Thanks a lot.